So, here we are, Dave, in the pod, and it's not the first time you've been here. You're no stranger to it. You are, by nature, a communicator, someone who loves a chat.
Found my forum with these podcasts.
Absolutely. Is very good at it, and has got some really positive messages to share with people in public, private, and third sector. Your world has been the social enterprise world, the third sector world, the world of ground up community growth over what is now 25 years. Your 25th year doing this. But what I wanted to do was kind of set a little bit of a scene before I hand over to you and ask you a few questions about your time over that 25 years. And I want to go back to when I first met you, which is now 2017, which seems to have just flown by. So we're talking nearly 7 years ago. And at that point, your vision was for work to create community wealth building within the Abram Ward, Platt Bridge area, as you would refer to them as the 5 villages.
Yep, that's right.
And we started to do some work to create a brand which is now known as Made in Wigan, which covers both Wigan and Leigh Borough, and that has over that time benefited a number of community interest companies born out of that initiative. One of many that you've steered over that 25 years, no doubt. But I, at that point, was setting out, having done 20 odd years myself in design and communications, setting up my own business. And what I was doing was quickly realizing that there is obviously the world of the private sector, but then also the world of the social enterprise and third sector, community interest companies and charities that have to survive from the donations of the people within the community, the support of the private sector, of which I was embarking upon my own journey, and also through funding pots, which are sometimes few and far between and hard to find, and other times are available to the majority, but there are provisos with that. And you, as I understand it, head up this sector now, this social enterprise sector within the borough, which I was amazed to know is somewhere in the region of 250 or odd social enterprises.
We say that, yeah. It's a very fluffy figure, some don't know. But yeah, we got average, say, 250, yeah.
Okay. So I've thoroughly enjoyed our relationship over the time that we've known each other. We've worked together. We've grown awareness and understanding and success for some community interest companies. Supported a lot between us, and I guess that's led us to this moment now where my business now includes a podcast studio, which you use regularly to communicate your messages, and we create content for you in support of the message for Wigan and Leigh Community Charity. But I'm just scratching the surface of the time that you've been in this sector. I'd also like to add that we both have lived and grown up in Abram, and so we have a kind of a kindred understanding of some of the boroughs that are perhaps, or some of the areas of the borough that are perhaps more challenged from a prosperity point of view. But let that be the scene set, and my first question to you would be, take me back, if you will, to the very beginning, and tell me, where did it all start for you in this sector, Dave?
It all started in 99. I'd left college, like I say, born in Abram, Went to school in Hindley.
Yeah.
Studied, got a degree. I was one of them like lazy people as a kid in terms of I studied and then basically spent my summer holidays enjoying it.
Okay.
Left college 98. But then that experience of not having any volunteer experience or anything really played negative to me. So I spent a while trying to find dig around, trying to find a role. And then luckily, I got offered a voluntary placement at the credit union.
Okay.
And I got a call, I remember it like it was yesterday, like, oh, do you want to go and volunteer at the credit union? I'm like, well, where is it? Because I was planning on going to the Citizens Advice Bureau, which is in Leigh. That's where I was planning to volunteer at. And I thought, wow, that's down the road. That's perfect. I can walk to it, etc. And on the first day I walked in, which was about June 99, I could see across the road this building, like 3 quarters being built. And I'm like, oh, what's that building? And I'm like, oh, yeah, it's going to be this youth zone. It's had all this. And then, and luckily for me, the lady who was my, a lady called Gwen Jones, who was my line manager on my voluntary placement at the credit union, was also one of the committee members for this.
I see.
And so I had 2 months volunteering for the credit union, helping them with a little bit of marketing, etc. And then ultimately they were like, we need to start applying for some jobs here now. Then one of the roles is admin assistant. So I applied for it, did my interview. No surprise, it wasn't the best interview in the world. I was probably over-talked too much on it. But then luckily I got a phone call off them and they said, we like the fact that you've proven yourself in the voluntary work that we've seen. So even though the interview probably wasn't the best, we want to give you a role.
Okay. It's
going to be part-time, job share. I'm like, job share's fine, if it just means working 2.5 days a week, it's a start. So I did, and I took the role with this other lady called Anne Robinson, and we basically worked part-time as administrators of what was called Platt Bridge Zone.
Yes.
Long story short, they had a few politics over the next couple of years.
And what was the building, Dave, for that? Where was the building for the Platt Bridge Youth Zone?
Yeah, so the building now, it used to be a block of flats,
yes.
So on Ribble Road.
Yeah.
It used to be a block of flats. What is the cafe now? That used to be an off licence.
Okay.
And basically what I know, the office spaces used to be somebody's living quarters.
I see.
It was disused for, 5-10 years. So the local community got together in 97, I think it was, and got 500,000, 486,000, I think, to be precise. So it was amazing that these young kids and local business people all got together to say, we want something where we as young people could set up our own business. If childcare's a barrier, we need a nursery. We want somewhere for like gatherings, etc. So let's have a cafe facility, but also let's put on some training so that so it's like a one-stop shop to help people on the estate who, as you said before, Platt Bridge, one of the deprived areas, and it was brilliant. And these 10 offices on the top floor where it was meant to be. We didn't call it social enterprise obviously back then, but that was basically what it was meant to be.
Yes.
And it's interesting, they went to places in Liverpool, stuff that recently when we started full circle looking at social enterprise, they actually studied going to Liverpool in the same place that I did in the mid-90s to learn, a place called Blackburn House in Liverpool.
Okay.
Where School of Social Entrepreneurs are based, where I did some of my training. So it was amazing to think, wow, this is a great place now. Fortunately, the challenges, and when they basically got the money and launched in August 99. So that's obviously, like I say, 25 years now.
Yeah.
But the challenges were, a lot. The nursery at the time, trying to get Ofsted registered.
Yes.
And there was challenges, etc. So the usual challenges that go when you're setting up a company. And unfortunately, or fortunate for me, the challenges basically meant that after about 18 months, most of the staff who were in place, who basically had mortgages, they were obviously, I was a young person who lived at home at the time, they all had to move on because there was financial pressures as well.
Sure. So just on that then, thinking about the challenges of the social enterprise network effectively, or anyone running a social enterprise, here's something that was set up, here's something that was then a solution which that community saw as being a really great pushing off point, let's call it, jumping off point for for entrepreneurial spirit and this ground up community wealth building. Those that were running it, the irony being that they were in such a situation where financially they were committed with responsibilities, and ultimately perhaps couldn't find a way for that to sustain them. And what that meant was, it's pure economics, isn't it? You found yourself in a situation where, being that you were at home, you were then naturally kind of taking responsibility for their roles in some respect. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and it is ironic that the people trying to set up the building, unfortunately, like you say, the challenges that they're almost like that. And like I say, it's been great in recent years to learn from that, and that's always still there to think, like I said, the business planning, the cash flow forecast,
sustainability,
the legal stuff, all this kind of kind of stuff behind the scenes, things like that. But yeah, and then we got to, like I say, and I was then in that position, and I did some social media feeds recently, and one of the people I acknowledged is Sir Ian McCartney, who was our MP at the time for Makerfield. Ian back in the day, fairly senior in the Labour Party, but also from the Platt Bridge area.
Yes.
And he saw this building and was like, we need to save this building, we need to do something. So he spoke to Wigan Council and he's like, we need to do something with it, because in fact we can't lose it, but it just needs a bit of a change. It just needs, not necessarily the council to come in and take it over and change the vision for it. So I suppose it was fortunate that I was then last person standing in theory, in terms of, so by 2 years, by the summer of 2001, it was literally me calling to a meeting with Wigan Council and a couple of the committee members who were still local, who had been, sticking on board. And the council said, we will basically take over the building, we will tupe you into the council, which was the economic development team.
Yeah.
There's an organisation called Douglas Valley. They will take over the building and we will take over your contract.
Okay.
But we basically want you, they said, to carry on as normal. We know you're a local person, just carry it, doing it on there. Obviously they offered support behind the scenes, etc., in terms of not necessarily financial, but knowledge of, because I'm like, I've never managed a building before. I've got to deal with, surveys, you've got to deal with plumbing and maintenance and things like, oh my God, this is and that's pretty much what happened for the next 12 years, where the council left me to it, allowed me to bring in local groups, bring in partnerships with the college at the time. Bring in local community who wanted to do things like bingo, so we changed it around a bit. We had to change the name because it was like, okay, Platt Bridge Youth Zone doesn't quite fit anymore, because a lot of the adults using it. So in 2003 we changed it Platt Bridge Community Zone. And it was brilliant. We did a massive thing. We got the schools on board.
So this is in 2003.
This is in 2003. The schools helped create the logo. We got local business people. So it was really good.
Just on that then, Dave, at that point. So you've been given the freedom to design, the freedom to create, the freedom to engage with the community and design and build and conceptualise what that Platt Bridge Community Zone became. And one of the things was to actually create the logo for it. It seems to me that I've always known this about you. You will engage the community to get a sense of ownership on any project. So that in itself, to me, seems now, when I think about it, perhaps the first time where you decided to leverage that interest that the community would have, that sense of ownership, by offering the design of the logo for it.
And this is what we've always said. It's like, I mean, I don't have particular skills in marketing or in this and that, but we know the skills that are out there in enablers, and whether people call it asset-based community development or whatever people call it, we know that out there, and we thought, the skills are out there in the community. Do it. Let's just find a way of bringing them in. Of course, it helped back in the day. The challenge was then the office spaces, because clearly the pipeline of young people, local people coming through was not there in the first 12 months of this bill. So then, of course, the council then kind of had to then intervene and say, well, actually, these are, we'll start to, if anybody basically contacted Wigan Council, we're looking for office space, particularly charities. And that's where Wigan and Leigh Scope, who are now Embrace Wigan and Leigh, came in. That was around the back end of 2001, I think it was, where they got asked, and I remember showing them around. Caroline Tomlinson, who now manages My Life, showing them around. You can have a couple of office spaces. There was like the Veterans Council, there was Home Start Wigan, there was Youth Matters, there was Play Temps, there was Learning Disabilities Partnership Board. There was hundreds of, well, not hundreds, that's right, tens of groups, let's just say, all use these spaces.
So therefore, a real active hub at the point where you get that, don't you? Where there's a little bit of an inertia, and then as soon as you get one, that becomes two, and then that becomes 5 and 8 and so on, all using that space and networking and collaborating.
Well, that was the big thing, and that's where my love of the cooperative kind of way of working happened, because we got to this stage where Caroline at Embrace and Lynn Hamnet, who's now the manager now still, all basically were like, and I remember Caroline saying it, she's like, they were an early charity at this point, and they were like, we need somebody to look after our volunteers. And they're like, to be fair, I always used to call myself like a glorified caretaker. It was like, well, my job is just turn up, make sure everybody's booked into the room. Is there enough toilet roll? Yeah. Is there enough this and this? That's it. And it's like,
much more than that.
It's
facilitator.
Exactly. But when everything runs smoothly, which at the time it was great, it did. It makes life a lot easier. But Caroline and Embrace were brilliant. They'd be like, why don't you come and help out our volunteers? And we need somebody to look after it. So all of a sudden, Embrace, people used to, and I would spend pretty much all my time helping Embrace. I'd do my day-to-day job, and then we'd all start to work together. And in return, Embrace would start to like mentor me, and say, we'll help you out here, Dave, we'll help you. So that partnership started working. Yeah. And then as other groups started to come on board and new tenants started to come in, we never had any tenants who would just turn up, rent the space. You might see them over a brew in the kitchen or something, and that was never the case. No. They all came in and they all worked together, but crucially as well, they were all ones that by sheer luck, I suppose, really, or by design, I don't know, or by the fact that they saw the building and thought, this is for us. They also interacted with the local community, because there was nothing. We didn't want to turn it into one of these office buildings where it's got a nice fancy building, nice busy car park, but people in the community stood on the outside thinking, what's going on in there? Yeah. So it felt like, so Embrace is the perfect example. The two managers now, Chris Hamnet and Lynn Hamnet from Platt Bridge, local, everybody knew him. They would support the local community. Yeah. They get involved in gala days that we're already planning, etc., like that. I used to do all the five-side football at the gala days, and we used to do all this stuff. So it always felt like this, and it's interesting now when you look at Embrace now, who call the cafe now Hidden Gem, because that's what it's always felt like. This is a little hidden gem. Yeah. We're there in the middle of a housing estate that people don't really know when you drive through Wigan to get to Leigh or Ashton to Hindley. And we're there, and people are like, oh my God, I didn't realise this. Yeah. I remember the veterans, when they were in the building, they were like, we need to kind of like the image at night time. They had a picture, perfect image at night time with the sunset, and they were like, this is an amazing image. But it was just never, it's not on everybody's pathway. So, so over the years, this cooperative spirit kind of just born out of the way, you're only as good as the people in the building, and everybody was like the perfect. But for me, it felt like a family. People always say, I didn't do it for the money. I didn't turn up. No. It wasn't like I was, on the astronomical. It wasn't like I barely could, but I didn't really worry about me salary. I was just like, this is a job. It's in my own neighbourhood. Yeah. And I love these people, to the point where when it became our wedding, my wife's wedding in 2012, a lot of the people who I invited were actually the volunteers from Embrace, who I knew from, who I'd known for, and we've been socialising and to this day, etc. Unfortunately, sadly, some have passed away, etc. But some, obviously, the friends we still socialise to this day, etc. Some of them are in the building now helping out, which is amazing. So Embrace have always been that family spirit, which I've always tried to maintain.
Yes, yeah, and I think there's a few things there to kind of unpack from my perspective. I think what one thing is genuinely that sense of place that you belonged there, and actually a sense of ownership amongst you, everyone who was a tenant in that building. As you say, no silos, everyone communicating and collaborating to better everything for everyone, to not have closed doors, to actually invite the community in and let them benefit from what was going on in the community zone, is definitely something that is apparent to me. There's a couple of things that I always find, or did find, when I first started to learn about your sector and what you do, that I always found to be, for anyone who is uninitiated, a slight blocker to an understanding of what you're about, and that is some of the phrases that are used. So, for example, if I think about ground up community wealth building, well, what does that actually mean? But the things that you're telling me and the way that you're describing it, I now completely understand that what you mean by that is, at ground level, in those communities, allowing people to be empowered to do things that will better that community from an actual prosperity point of view, but also from a community health point of view. So wealth can be seen in a number of different ways. When you think about asset-based management, we know what we mean by that is, what have we got in the community that is a set of skills that will help us all to get on in life? And so what I'm saying, I suppose, is that you have always, for me, been able to clarify what you mean by this sector and what it's all about by the action of it, as opposed to by the phraseology of it. And here you are with 25 years of delivery, some of which you've already just spoken about, which gives a real sense of what that sector is all about and what the aims of the sector are. And you deservedly take your place, leading the social enterprise network. So the ComZone, we're talking 2003, we're in a position where it's all starting to pull together. You've got tenants in the building, there's a sense of collaboration. It's understood in the community what this place is about. Tell me about the next phase.
Yeah, because we started to work more with, I think it was around about 2005, when down the road in the other side of Platt Bridge we had the new primary school, the health centre, the community first. So it's nice to start building partners fur and field, like you say, and obviously that helped that we had something called the Platt Bridge Community Forum, which still goes to this day, that used to plan the gala days and local events, and I'm still to this day the secretary of that. We started to bring all these other partners in, which was brilliant. As I mentioned before, we had the Wigan College, so they came in and did an amazing partnership. So everything was going really well, and it was really up until the changes that go out there in the wider world, which was austerity and all the cuts in 2008, 2009.
Recession.
It took probably, and then unfortunately the team that I was in at the council, obviously at the time, was, and obviously Wigan Council at the time, was one of the hardest hit. And so it was around about 2012 when obviously it got to a phase where there had to be some changes, and unfortunately one of the options on the table wasn't the only option, but one of the options was, David, we might have to dispose of this building or sell it on or whatever, because there is massive budget cuts. We don't want to do it, but unfortunately these are the things that happen. And the team that I was in, the economic development team, was one of the hardest hit, and one of the and I totally got it. It's like, this is unfortunate. So I'll be honest, I started to look around and think, is this it? No, I remember actually the local primary school where I'm actually a governor now, at Platt Bridge Community School, and the Children's Centre, they had this awards event at the back in, I think it was 2011 or 2012, and they gave me a little award, because I was thinking oh, well done, Dave, thanks for everything the last whatever it was 12 years or so, but nice, and thank you for everything you've done. And I was like, literally that was it. But then there was something in the back of my mind, and I used to have this weird story of going to DW Stadium. The Brick Stadium now, should I say.
Yeah, Brick Community Stadium.
And I remember being in the lift. Very strange, I don't know why I remember this for. But there's a few people in the lift, and I think there's a lady called Kathy Varley, who's a friend of ours now at Locality, and I forgot this other gentleman's name. And he was talking about, and we were going to some conference thing, and he was talking about collaboration and cooperative working and things like this, and stuff he was talking about. And I don't know what made me kind of think when I went home that night, and I thought, you know what, maybe why don't we look at a cooperative and you, again, it's a passion that you have. It's just it's there, you know it, but without actually understanding how to set up a cooperative, how to do all this stuff. So I remember going on and researching, found Cooperatives UK, typed it in, and I thought, oh, yeah, this is interesting, and they were amazing. I spoke to Cooperatives UK. They put me in touch with a guy called Dave Hollins, who bizarrely I only bumped into a few months ago in a meeting in Manchester, who runs something called Cooperatives and Mutual Solutions. And he was like, we're here, you know, we'd come and help people set up cooperatives. I said, well, I'll just have to speak to so I spoke to Wigan Council, and they were brilliant. They were like, so Susan Gambles, who's now one of the councillors, and Tricia Evans, etc. And they were like, you know, my boss at the time was a guy called Keith Malloy and Steve Burns. And they were like, if you want to do this, but are you sure? Because we've already had to save the building once before. We don't really want to be coming in and saving it again. And I was like, well, this is why I want to do the cooperative, because, you know, if one tenant, you know, everybody's got a sense of ownership, and that will
the wisdom and support of the crowd,
and that will create the sustainability, because it's going to be a shared interest and a shared ownership. I was lucky that I didn't realise that on the horizon was this thing called Wigan Deal and the funding that came with it. So I basically had about 6 or 7 months where I was literally spending my day effectively writing my business plan, which was, you know, I need to do all this, and you know, this Cooperatives and Mutual Solutions came in, did amazing work with me, did amazing work with the tenants. I also brought in the local councillors, the local school, the local housing officers, some local businesses to say, we need to all work together on this. Hence why, in my head, I thought, I don't want to just set up an organisation, call it Platt Bridge Community Zone. I want to maintain what Platt Bridge Community Zone does, but continue to work with the wider area and
make it more inclusive again.
Exactly, and being from Abram, like, why can't there be more places like Platt Bridge Community Zone in Abram? Why can't we save more buildings? So that's why I called it Abram Ward Community Cooperative. Cooperative spirit in the community for Abram Ward, and all these partners, and everybody was like, love it. You know, people were there. One of the guys, Barry Hampson, who's one of the former local councillors, like, I'll be a chairperson. I'll be a chairperson. Wow, this is amazing, fantastic.
Let me stop you there. Just at that point, we'll keep it at that point. Though we've got Abram Ward Community Cooperative on ice now and a thing. We're talking 2012.
2012,
And to my mind, this beautiful moment in the lift, this thing about cooperatives, and that's stuck in your mind. When I think about it now, it's quite a logical step. Well, it's a totally logical step, because actually what that point in time forced you into, I guess, is galvanising everything that you probably already had in your mind about the blueprint that was right for Platt Bridge Community Zone at the time. This idea of leveraging and pulling the community together from further afield, and effectively the business plan that you were, I suppose, forced to write because of the learning that you had with Cooperatives UK and so on was a brilliant moment, really, wasn't it? Where now you've got this business plan that is no different to the plan that you were probably going to execute had it continued the way it was, but now it's with more people involved, and a new way of working effectively. So tell me now that we're at this point, what happened next then?
So I had the buy-in from all the tenants and the local community. It was now that thing of, where do I get the money from to do this? You know, where do we get it from? And then I remember looking around, and then eventually I was looking at round about beginning of 2013, I think maybe back end of 2012, Wigan Council announced they were going to do this thing called the Wigan Deal and the Deal for Investment Communities Fund. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And obviously I was still working for the council, but I was like, and then obviously, you know, I said, well, and they're like, apply for it. And then in a bizarre kind of way, how things always come full circle, I got invited to do a training session with some people who were out there training people how to apply for it. And the people who who were running my session was a lady called Liz Douglas and a guy called Tom Hickson, who were obviously supporting the council to help people with funding. And obviously both Tom and Liz a part of our team now, obviously with the work that they do with their own enterprises, obviously supporting us. And so they obviously helped us set up our business plans, and they helped us apply for the funding. So yeah, then we applied for the funding, and then got the funding in 2013.
Yeah.
It then took 12 months then to do the asset transfer policy.
Yes.
I obviously had to take voluntary redundancy from the council,
Yeah.
so all that happened.
A lot of legals and things like that.
Yeah, the usual
on.
stuff. Yeah. So by by August 2014, I think it was June, August, I'm not sure, it's in 2014, that's when we finally got the building.
Yeah. And you've got a continuity of service that you still have to run.
Yeah.
You still have to operate.
Yeah.
You've still got your tenants and so on.
There was a shame that some of the tenants, like More Than Words, obviously at the time, kind of outgrew the building, and that was always what we always saw. It's like our aim is to grow, incubate and grow. So More Than Words are a perfect example of a group who were in the building from about 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
And then by 2014, but then that's where kind of a lot of my development into becoming a bit of an enterprise network.
Yes.
Actually, that was one of the first cases of, it wasn't a case of right, see you later, never to speak to you again. More Than Words and Sue Seeger were like, can you help us with finding a building? Can you help us? And obviously they're in the Edge now, and I remember they invited me to along and meet them in the Edge and kind of hopefully support them in whatever way. Said, well, you know how to do buildings, Dave. Is there what do they? So that kind of stuff kind of happened there. Again, just organically, these things kind of happen again through the people you work with. Yeah. Sue could have just said, right, we're never going to speak to you ever again, but they didn't, and that kind of, and they always continue to want that support, which we do now. Embrace obviously in the building, and then slowly we just started to the nursery. Jack in the Box Nursery, who've been we had two nurseries in the building, Mini Zone Nursery, now Jack in the Box, who've been in since 2009. They stayed in and they've always been crucial. The nursery's been the crucial factor in it all, because you've got to have that element of community. And it's amazing that despite whatever people say about Platt Bridge and neighbourhoods like Platt Bridge and others in the borough always get badged and labelled, etc. But in 25 years we've had one maybe slight minor damage to the building, and I've always prided ourselves that we're a glass fronted building, front door that's open, and people respect the building because the local community know we're there for them. Absolutely. Most of the people who are of probably working age now have been in a nursery, so that kind of feeling of having the nursery there is massively crucial.
Fantastic.
Not because what it does for the community, but also the fact that also brings that sense of identity.
There are families that have been born out of it.
Well, exactly. People say, oh yeah, I used to go, to the point where it always makes me laugh that most people still to this day will say, oh, you work for Embrace Wigan Leigh, or you work for the nursery, because and that in a way is
it's a great testament.
It's nice that people just don't realise that so like I said, we got the building and everything kind of grew from there.
One thing that I've just noted to myself there is that there's a turn of phrase that you used in the middle of that, and that was a social enterprise network, an enterprise network. And what we're seeing here is a kind of an organic growth from being a community cooperative that started off as just a community zone, cooperative being the next level up, but then this idea of social enterprise network, where what you're then doing is you're birthing people out from that community zone to go and find the place somewhere else within the community, but that has some real genuine roots within the community zone that don't ever disconnect, and that ability to make that network then and help each other on a larger scale, I guess, is what I'm feeling I'm getting from the idea of a social enterprise network that's been born out of the original work.
Because there was a social enterprise network that had tried to start, so I was lucky that when I did some of my training with Wigan Council, they came links in with the School of Social Entrepreneurs, who I mentioned before, based in Liverpool, and they tried to do a social enterprise network, and then it did well, but again, it always used like based down to funding, and it kind of discontinued. But Shirley Southworth, who does Fairclap now, was part of it, and a few of us who were around at that time. It was probably about 10. I used to think there's probably only about 10 social enterprises I knew at the time, and we all used to go to this little network meeting in like the investment centre in different places, and for me that's when like there was a real sense of like family occasion, something that definitely, and of course that then wasn't there, and obviously nobody really was talking much about social enterprise. Understandably, the voluntary community sector is what everybody knows. And I remember Wigan Council were like, we're looking into this, but you know, and they've said it a few times, like, but you could probably do it quicker than us, or not better, or whatever. So if you want to go off and, but of course, most of my money was focused on Aber and Ward, but there was always that amazing people. So like Jo Platt now, who's the MP of Leigh again, was brilliant. That she obviously had groups in Leigh, and again through maybe word of mouth or whatever, people would say, "Oh, Dave, there's a group here in Leigh. Can you come and support them?" And I had the choice at that point and say, "Nope, I'm only funded to do Aber and Ward. No, so I can't do it." But I thought, you know what? Why not? I go and do it. You know what I mean? Why not share some of this potential? And I think that kind of helped. So suddenly I started helping these others, and then, like you say, then it was like, oh, do we have an enterprise network here?
Little seeds that are growing in each of these little relationships.
But again, it's like, I've always been one who's always somebody who's always like struggled with confidence. I used to kind of think, if I'm set up a network, is anybody really going to be that interested in it? And it's only until a few years later when people, obviously friends of ours, so Sonia Bithell, Kerry Whittle, came on board, and they kind of were like, yeah, we need to do something. So they really were like people, and it's nice that they're our trustees now, who kind of gave like the backing that, we need to do this in Wigan, and we'll support you with it. And both Sonia and Kerry were massive supporters with it. So that was kind of like where we're branching outside of Aber and Ward here, doing other little bits. But again, it was kind of like just a bit of almost like a hobby, really, doing this other bit. My day-to-day job was here.
I've got a different view on that, and I think that it comes down to my observation about you as a person. I think that it's part of your DNA. It's part of what makes you tick. You know, you want to see progress. You want to see that community spirit. You want to see people getting on in areas that are socially deprived in a lot of cases. But it's part of your nature. So I wouldn't see it as being anything other than part of you, and a natural benefit that those that get to collaborate with you will get from that relationship with you. That's just my observation on it.
That's nice you say. It's and I thought you say it's just been, and it was one of those moments in 2015 into 2016, and it was kind of like I said, we were doing amazing stuff in Aber and Ward, and everything was great. And then I remember there was talk in Wigan. There was obviously challenges around, you know, do we need a CVS? And they're still happening to this day, like a local infrastructure organisation. But there was a plan to say we need probably almost like in this kind of cooperative spirit, and this thing which ended up becoming Wigan Borough Community Partnership, then formed. And again, I didn't realise, but then what happened was that Wigan Council brought in some people to kind of speak to people across the borough to say, who do you go to for business support, volunteer support, whatever? And about 8 or 9 different names were mentioned, and luckily one of those was myself. And so it was like, well, if these names are the people out there in the borough, this is what Wigan Council was saying, we need to bring them together and form this new group, whatever that would be called, and that then became Wigan Borough Community Partnership. So myself and people from Leigh and people across the rubber, and obviously Colin Greenall, she's now obviously one of our colleagues at Groundwork, was one of those as well, because Colin at the time was, I think he was like chairing the third sector assembly and things like this. Chris Essex Crosby was another one, Gemma Atkinson and that. So we all kind of came together, and so it was nice to suddenly then be like, oh my word, I'm now doing my Aber and Ward stuff. So I effectively had 2 roles, even though I was paid under the one. And that then obviously started to get me a bit more aware of what's going on in a GM level and things like this, but also have a bit more, again, backing to say, why don't you? And I was basically there to be the person to lead the social enterprise network bit. So all these things were kind of like happening. But But then obviously the heart was still the Abram Ward stuff.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky that in Abram, in the Platt Bridge Community Zone, the tenants were in, everything was settled. But then I had to kind of then go back and think, right, how are we then going to do this neighbourhood stuff in Abram Ward? Because, you know, how do we do a massive consultation piece is the biggest challenge. Because and then I heard about Standish doing something called Standish Voice, and they were like 6 months into it. And I remember speaking to our local councillors to say, there's a thing here called neighbourhood planning. Standish are doing it. You're like, do you think we could do this in Abram Ward? Because what a great way to bring the villages together, the 5 villages, and do some consultation. And obviously when we spoke to people, we're like, hey, it's mainly about housing and stuff. And it's like, we don't really have any major housing challenges, you know, etc. But this constant thing kept coming through about people saying, like, we need to safeguard our buildings and our open spaces for economic development purposes. We've got amazing open spaces, but they're not in day-to-day life. You just drive through Abram Ward. And if there are buildings like Abram Labour Club was demolished, Platt Bridge Labour Club was demolished, it's like we're losing all these buildings here. So I was lucky. I went to the council and said to the councillors, and they in November 2015ish said, we'll, and it had to go through the cabinet in front of the council. So by 2015, we now had this thing called Abram Ward Neighbourhood Forum, which was a sidearm of Abram Ward Community Cooperative. And I remember at the time thinking, you know, is it really gaining any traction, this? And there was a few bodies who kind of like assess neighbourhood planning on a national level, saying, I don't think there's much interest in this, because they send stuff out to kind of, you know, are there any issues of anybody who votes this in or not, and was there anybody feedback? And so we literally, I remember we got to like beginning in like 2016, and it seemed to be like, and I just put a call to arms out to people locally, and I remember it, and like head teachers from primary schools and people from businesses. It must have been about 70-80 people just walked into our what is now the cafe here at Platt Bridge, and all in support, saying, no, we want to do this, etc. We want to do it. So that kind of got everybody saying, yeah, we want to do this.
Powerful.
And then local people were then saying from Bickershire and Bamflong and Springview and Abram and Platt Bridge, the villages, we want to be part of it. So that neighbourhood plan is still going to this day. Touch wood, we're in the situation where maybe by end of this year it's going to go to referendum. Obviously Standish have got a neighbourhood plan approved. Goulburn and Loughton did theirs approved, so Abram Ward is hopefully going to be the third one. So that then gave us the ability to then have a bit of an action plan for the area, what opportunities we could kind of do, etc. And at least know that if we were going to create enterprises or save buildings, it's what the community want and not what I want or whatever. But of course, obviously, everything kind of carries on, and then you kind of think, funding's going to be, what is the future of this, etc. Are there any buildings out there in Abram Ward? What is the plan for this? And then we ended up in this amazing moment I always kind of feel in December 2016 when I got a phone call from an organisation called Power to Change. And I kind of thought it was a bit of a joke at first. We're like, we're an organisation called Power to Change, and we're really interested in this thing called community business, which didn't really talk about community business really, and you know, we want to give you some funding, 10,000 to basically, and I'm like, oh my word, you know, like we'll do something like this. So that money then enabled us to start doing it. And I remember speaking to some local guys in the local bicycle shop, etc., who basically were all like, we want to, you know, there's nowhere for us to kind of meet up. And that then became the Men's Sheds group, just through simple conversation there. We had people like Amanda Robinson at Miss Places, who was doing a therapeutic session in Platt Bridge, and she was like, we want to do something else with crafts. So suddenly all these conversations at this small little, well, I wouldn't say small, it was 10 grand, it was a reasonable size learning grant from Power to Change, enabled us to start having conversations. And then, of course, obviously by beginning of 2017, that's when Power to Change announced that actually the 20 that they had chosen, we didn't have to apply for it, these 20 that they chose, we're then going to get whittled down to 6, and we're going to get £1 million each. And then obviously that's when the nerves came in. And going back to Sonia Bithell, I remember speaking to Sonia, who was working for business in the community at the time, and saying, could we had to go to Leeds, because it wasn't an application, it was a bit of an application, but it was like the scoring was 80% presentation, 20% application.
Dragon's Den moment.
And he was literally like, Sonia, can you come to Leeds with me, because I can't do this. I can talk clearly, but to do all this in 15 minutes, I need somebody who knows what they're talking about, who can support me with it. And Sonia came with me, and she was brilliant, and we did a double act, etc. So between Sonia and I, we then got the amazing email.
She's a powerhouse, isn't she?
Well, exactly, that was it, and it was
full
like
of confidence.
I needed that
really
there and that.
professional. Yeah.
Exactly, and having Sonia there, and the confidence and the experience she brought in, and then the background and everything else.
Yeah.
And eventually, we obviously got the money, which was amazing, and then
But no mean feat.
No,
going from 20 to 6.
Yeah.
And being one of the 6.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about is 6 areas, some of them significant sized areas. As I understand it, I'm going to try to rhyme them all off now, but you can help me with this. I know that there was Bradford in that mix.
Yeah.
Then there was Plymouth in that mix. Then there was Hartlepool in that mix. Who else?
Grimsby and Leicester.
And Wigan.
And obviously Wigan,
yeah. So I'd probably say, I might be wrong, but probably the smallest catchment, Wigan.
No, Hartlepool's the smallest.
Okay.
Yeah, Hartlepool's radius was like a square mile radius, so they were focused on real neighbourhood level.
Yes.
Micro neighbourhood level in terms of the housing estate side.
I came with you to Hartlepool and we saw what they've done there.
They were amazing. And even to this day, they do some amazing stuff around community organising. Yeah. And every area was really good. And those, and like you say, you came to Bradford with us, Hartlepool, and it was amazing. And we managed to take some of the people that embrace Wigan and Leigh, Pedals, Pars and Pirouettes, Miss Places with us as well.
An inspiring thing, really, to do, to go and have a look at what these other areas were doing. And I remember you were referred to as catalysts.
Yeah.
You know, each one of you being a way of catalysing a word? Of being a catalyst for growth from a ground up point of view, community business. And we saw some phenomenal community businesses when we went around as well.
And it was, and just having then that wider knowledge, and every one of them really, I would say to this day, we've taken bits from, inspiration from, etc. Because everyone was different, but everyone was like, obviously different neighbourhoods and different sizes, etc. Plymouth obviously was, massive in terms of the seaside, the port, and obviously same with Grimsby and that. We've all taken little bits from them, etc., and inspiration from them. But like I say, and then obviously, as you said at the beginning, obviously that's when Sonia introduced us then to two people really, yourself obviously, and to Grace Dyke at Yellow Jigsaw. I remember Grace having the unenviable task of having to, both of you really having an unenviable task of saying, look, we've got this thing, but how do we explain it? Because we couldn't really, it's almost like how do you put it all into a website? How do you put it all into a flyer to say, this is, how do you explain to somebody that this is an organisation that does buildings, that manages buildings, it also manages a source enterprise network for the borough, it also does neighbourhood planning in communities, it's also doing stuff in schools. It's just like, how do you present that? It just became,
it was what's the phrase, it was quite a task to try to distill as much of that as possible into as simple a message as possible. But I think we managed it, and I think we captured the spirit of it with how we communicated it through the initial website. As you quite rightly say, it was about trying to draw an accurate photo fit drawing of the assailant that you were describing to us. This is what we are. This is what we're about. Cut away the parts that don't look like that. But there were so many parts that it was an exciting challenge, and one that we really enjoyed putting together with you and taking back, I guess, to the council to show them what the vision was and how it could be expanded further. But that was the point at which I picked up with you. So tell me how things have gone from there then, what the trajectory's been since then.
Yeah, so like I say, we had a lot of local groups, so we started doing what they call participatory budgeting, so we got the local community to decide on who voted, so men's sheds, a number of cafes. We managed to try and safeguard as best as possible Bickershire Village Club, because that's the only one, and culture with Bickershire Festivals, been a massive legacy in Aberdeen Wars. We're like, well, we need to safeguard it, so we spent some money trying to safeguard Bickershire Village Club, and that's doing amazing. And now
there's been some grassroots sports teams
so obviously Wigan Cosmos now, they obviously were looking at the field, and I think that's where the power of the neighbourhood plan came in, because obviously there were lots of other people interested in that land in Aberdeen, where we all played football as kids and things like this, but the fact that we had a neighbourhood plan, and a neighbourhood plan had said we want to keep this for local use, etc., then gave even extra motive or extra support to John Pendlebury. So I remember going with John to the asset transfer meeting with Wigan Council and say, not only has John got an amazing business plan and a passion, but this is what the local community wants. So the strength of having that neighbourhood plan showed even more so.
And it kind of spiraled out even further. You tell me about on the edge of Hindley, on the corner of the crossroads at Hindley, there was also a building there, wasn't there, that you'd... Tudor House.
Yeah, well, we're just in the process now of obviously trying to take that over, because that then came available, because we got to a phase where we were doing all this stuff in Aberdeen Ward, and that's been amazing, but then we then obviously, even though we were doing stuff for Wigan Borough Community Partnership, I still had this thing of the strategic side of what we were doing. So I remember getting to like 2019, and I remember thinking, I just had this thing in my mind. I thought, Wigan is a massive social enterprise town, and I heard about these thing called Places and Social Enterprise UK Places, and the only one in GM was Salford at the time.
I see.
And obviously Oldham and Stockport have got it now. So I just got a group of people together, like Kerry Whittle, yourself, Grace, and a number of social enterprises from across the borough, and we led the kite mark to get Wigan registered as a social enterprise town, which we managed to achieve in 2020. So suddenly all this extra borough-wide stuff was happening. We had the shop in the town centre that yourself and Yellow Jigsaw helped with, which kind of encapsulated everything of a place where you could actually buy stuff made locally, offer training to people and do liver courses, but also be a place where people in the town centre were like, I've had an interest in it. And the whole made in Wigan theory, which has always been that, everybody who lives and works in the Wigan Borough has at least one special skill or talent, and we want to turn that into a community business social enterprise. So that just enabled people who would walk past and think, oh yeah, maybe I can set up something.
Positioned on Hope Street, I remember.
Yeah, Hope Street. Yeah. It's a shame, obviously, but it's nice that some of that legacy still been there with the work we've been doing recently with Rebuild with Hope and things, and know there's some opportunities in the future, hopefully, to kind of resurrect some of that.
It's effectively, if I think about Rebuild with Hope, it reminds me of what the spirit of that shop was about.
Definitely. All that partnership working and getting people to realise that actually, and it was nice that some of the groups we've been working with recently said about, like the idea of like a Made in Wigan Emporium. So it's nice that some of that is still there, and the stuff they're working on at minute for maybe relaunching something like that later on in the year. So all of a sudden this stuff was kind of going on across Aberdeen Ward, and then like you say, then we just got to that stage where obviously COVID then came in, and then as with everything that took a huge dent. So then that but also that showcased exactly everything, and as it did everywhere, every neighbourhood.
It was the prism, wasn't it? Through which we kind of observed the struggles and the issues.
Every neighbourhood got together, from Springfield through to places in Leigh, and we all got together and showed that true power of the communities and neighbourhoods, and in partnership with the council. And for us at Platt Bridge Community Zone, we became having to do food response and having to do that, etc. And it was amazing delivering food to local people. We're like, didn't even know you're there, didn't know you was there, didn't know this kind of thing was going on in Platt Bridge kind of thing. So we did all that, and then of course, but then the other side to that was that it gave you that time to think, I can reset here and just review with our trustees the business plan going forward. Because we were coming to the end of our Power to Change programme, and obviously we wanted to maintain that legacy. The plan was never finish the programme and move on to the next thing. It's like, how do we move this legacy? And Power to Change always wanted that. Their vision was always to get a neighbourhood develop, become a catalyst, and could it grow into other neighbourhoods, etc. Could it take that learning in? So that was always in the back of my mind. And it was a shame in a way that when we started looking at neighbourhoods and looking at Hindley and other neighbourhoods, etc., that it always felt that some of the barriers were, yeah, but you're Aberham Ward, etc. You know, and I thought, you know what, that is it was a shame that I always felt that why can't a bottom up level organisation, neighbourhood level organisation, do stuff on a bigger neighbourhood basis without having to. But unfortunately, that's the way things seem to be. It caused confusion, so we had no kind of choice but to say, well, do we just change our name? And then that's where the name, because even though we were called Aberham Ward Community Cooperative, officially we were called Aberham Ward Community Charity.
Yes.
So it was a simple, let's take the Aberham Ward bit off, shove Wigan Leigh in front of it, become Wigan Leigh Community Charity, and start to first and foremost take that place-based approach into other neighbourhoods.
Yeah.
Obviously, we were never going to go into it. There's already, I pretty much say every neighbourhood in Wigan's got at least one catalyst already out there, whether that's a community organisation or based around a building.
Yeah.
The podcast we did here last week with Ince Rosebridge Rugby Club and Wigan Cosmos, their community is based around a sports club. So we weren't going to go in and say, yeah, we're going to do this, but if we could offer some support to neighbourhoods, most neighbourhoods already amazing stuff going on, but were there opportunities for us to support them? Like at the minute, one of our colleagues, Liz, is working with groundwork in the West Leigh area, and we've been doing stuff in Liz Douglas, trying to support stuff going on in Higher Falls and other neighbourhoods. So if we can take some of that kind of learning and community organising learning, if it means like in Hindley where there's opportunity for us to safeguard a building that is then we will do that. So the opportunity for us to take our legacy from Aberham Ward into other areas. Obviously Aberham Ward is still our bread and butter, and it's nice to still be able to, I'm a governor at Aberham and Platt Bridge schools, to still be able to do that. Some of the groups we work with, like Pianos, Pies and Pirouettes, have been working with us on stuff in the schools, which is amazing, so working with primary schools, secondary schools with Liz Douglas. So suddenly we're able to take some of this model and expand it, because Aberham doesn't have a secondary school, so we've never been able to do that, but started to work in Bedford High and some of the children there. And then when we did some work in Bedford High, we brought in Leigh Spinners, because that's the line of sight, as we always say there. So it's trying to bring that in, and that's ultimately where up to present day. But then of course, obviously, like anything, the social enterprise movement has started to kind of grow traction, obviously with the political changes going on at the minute, and certainly across Greater Manchester with obviously Andy Burnham and everything, that there's always a feeling of, social enterprise is a big thing. So when Andy Burnham just before lockdown started to set up something called the Greater Manchester Social Enterprise Action Group, and I was lucky to be chosen to be part of that. So that started to enable me to take some of the learnings. And I was probably one
beyond
of
the borough.
And I was probably one of the few who's probably actually from a neighbourhood background at there. So I think that's what they want. Is like, it's not always just top down level social enterprise. We need something from grassroots, and then obviously all that then kind of then grew into what is now things like the Proper Good programme, and of course at the minute where we now have something in GM called Our Business Cooperative, which is soon to be launched. And again, everything kind of feeling full circle. Our Business Cooperative is being managed at the minute, led by Cooperatives UK. And then a few months ago, Cooperatives UK were looking at a cooperative board to lead this, and they chose me. Wow. I applied to it, and obviously, so it's kind of like grassroots of now being the cooperative movement's always been there. Now to be on a GM cooperative board led by Cooperatives UK that is now going to form what could possibly be the big massive cooperative that is. So it's called Our Business Cooperative. So it literally is going to be a cooperative of all the social economy sector on this platform, and the support that kind of goes with it. And so to kind of be able to kind of be involved with cooperatives at a neighbourhood level, but also something on a massive GM level is going to be
that's brilliant,
fascinating.
You effectively are the line of sight nowadays.
Well,
you're the line of sight from the ground up community point of view through to those that will be in very, very privileged positions of responsibility. And I think those that are making decisions on a large scale like that do need someone who has gone from being someone looking for work, let's take it right back to 25 years ago, someone looking for work in that community, to being someone who's been a mainstay of that sector all the way through that time. I think that's a fantastic legacy that you've built over 25 years, and long may that continue for you, because this is an exciting point in time then, isn't it, if we're now finding you at such a table, let's call it that. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. And it is, and I've always said it. I'm fortunate. I'm just a guy who's born in Abram, etc. Lived in Standish a little bit, live in Lowton with my wife, and just that ability to, as I've always said to people, it's like, when I was a kid, my dad was a coal miner, and that's what I wanted to do, and I never really saw an industry outside of it, but when I kind of think, well, a second, I've started this journey 25 years ago because other people, young people, created a building, and that was my line of sight, which I didn't create, they created. How can we now create other spaces so that, there could be, like at Tudor House, for example, there could be a young person down in Hindley thinking like, what opportunities for me, and then suddenly, as I did 25 years ago, they could be thinking, oh my, what is a new building here? What's happening here? What's going on in Tudor House? And the next, person could be there who could be in 25 years' time managing there, and
but also growing a new generation of community business. Where it goes next, with the power of digital and everything else that we've got from a technology point of view. It's exciting, really, isn't it, to think what might the next 25 years hold. It's for me as well, looking into your world, I now see the relationships that we both share with some of the other leaders of these community interest companies, the likes of Liz Douglas, the likes of Alan Gregory, other people within the community who are very much a part of the network, Kerrin being one of them, and that's only mentioning 3. There's a lot of them out there that deserve recognition for playing their part in that overall network structure. But I think for me, it's been a privilege to watch you do what you do and pull those different groups together and have those conversations, create lines of sight, create ambition, and create enthusiasm for ground up community wealth building. It's great to think that you've plenty of years left in you as well. As I understand it, you did the Wigan 10K the other week.
Wigan 10K last weekend, yeah.
I mean, you
50,
still.
Me and my wife are 50 next year, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that gives you at least another 20 years of running the 10K then, and keeping doing what you're doing. But it's been a privilege to chat to you about it all. Is there anything else that you wanted to get into this? Because as we've said, we like a chat. There is an hourglass on the table. I'm joking, because the sands have well run out. No, but if there's anything else that you wanted to make sure that we got into this, Dave, then by all means, crack on with anything else that you think we need to mention.
No, I think we've covered it. Yeah.
No, I think congratulations on 25 years, Dave. I think the borough's benefited from your efforts, as you call it, a hobby, but I don't think it is. I think it's a passion that you've got. I think it's a set of skills that not a lot of people have the ability to have people warm to your vision, have people engage with you on that larger vision, and you've pulled together some unique people over time that have all contributed to it with you, but that's testament to you, I think.
No, I appreciate it. And like I said, it is, and that's the thing in it. There's so many people out there who, and it's hard. When you look at it, I've got so many people out there you don't want to mention, etc. Obviously, at least I love my wife, and I always kind of say to people that, the really hard times of this, Lisa's always been there, my wife there, and that's been the key to all this, to have a wife there who's been literally like supportive, etc. Because we know when you're in this sector, it's not it's not a great well-paid sector. It's
No.
hard at times.
Yeah.
You're always having to fight. I know any job these days is always kind of hard, obviously, and there's no industry these days that's ever secure, etc.
No.
But in our sector, etc. But yeah, and I think that's the great thing I love, is just being that ability to meet all these different people of all ages and all abilities, and just kind of like, and you learn from everybody and the passion, and it's great now to see that, like you say, in GM. And I was having a chat earlier on today with people in Bolton and in Manchester, and I was in Oldham the other day at the Oldham Athletic Ground, and we're meeting people there, what they do, and yeah, there's definite show spirit. And I think, and I was obviously I was really honoured when I got we got the Wigan Business Awards in November. So to be shortlisted of on the Lifetime Achievement. You know, I keep saying to people, it makes me feel a bit older. I feel like that, you know, when you have those kind of BAFTA awards, when you have like the, let's give, like, you know, David Attenborough the Lifetime Achievement thing, you know, because he's kind of like, you know, he's had 60 years of it. You feel like, oh my word, it's like, you know.
Are they calling time on you?
I'm going to say, it's like, is this like, let's give him something now, or let's nominate him before he retires. That's what I feel like, anyway.
I seriously doubt that. So yeah, so maybe it'll be good to see you in a tux, but remember that the overall awards, I think it's only
tux. Oh my god, no.
It's only I think the overall award is only about 3 hours, so keep your acceptance speech.
Well, I don't know. Apparently, I don't know. I think there's obviously it's a strong list, but all of them are good, and it's been great to
be part of it.
Yeah, it's just nice to be. It's just nice to be recognised. I think that's the key thing at all. Whether
well, if it's up to me, we'll get you a flag in Believe Square before we're done. Okay.
Cheers,
Cheers, Dave.
Thanks, mate.